gas ourselves up, but we short on breath. Talking about we eating, but who we really cooking. Dreaming about greens, but ain't nobody looking. No land, no acres, no seeds in the ground. When the hunger hits, who's gonna be around? We starving every day, and it just ain't the food. Feeding the hood garbage, got 'em acting a fool. We flossing with rides, stunting with chains, but these bars we spitting just bring more pain. We guilty as hell, preaching all these lies, selling debt to the kids, and we acting surprised. We commercialize the pain, broadcast the grief, tell the youth to hustle, but hide the beef. We glorify the trap, invite them to the flames, just like Reagan brought the crack on planes. Back in the 80s when the streets got soaked, my people, my brothers, all got choked. Reagan said no trades, but we know the deal. He left us in the dirt, man, that shit was real. I was just a shorty watching it unfold, old enough to see how we got sold. War on drugs, but it was war on us. Cops on our necks, no love, no trust. They labeled us thugs, beast on the block, made us kiss the pavement while they cleaned our clock. Prison became business thanks to Reagan's game. Free labor's the truth in America's name. Slavery's dead, man. That's just a word. Read the 13th Amendment, it's still absurd. They lock us in cages, serving time for life. Double digits for wisdom, cutting sharp like a knife. I'm here to say, the chains in the air, it's time we break free, start showing we care. No more flexing for nothing, no more selling out. It's time to rise up. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. And we always start off with music, and this morning I got Dre Dior, Sexual Therapy, and with that, we'll be right back.
She said she love when I talk that shit. When I grab her neck, then kiss those lips. Body on mine, feel that drip, no miss. Swear running down, I'm deep in the mix. I ain't here for the combo, I'm here for the fix. Every touch got her legs doing tricks. You my medicine, girl, that's it. I need another dose so that body don't quit. You got that therapy, baby, you healing me slow. I'm tryna fuck all that pain out your soul. You keep on whispering, don't let me go. You know I wanna. Sexual therapy, yeah. Girl, you my remedy, yeah. Sweat on your skin, you sweating out my energy. Say my name when I'm deep, that's my melody. Ain't no love, but the sex got chemistry, yeah. Sexual therapy, fuck insecurities. Spin you over, hit it right, no sympathy. Baby, you a drug and I'm the thing you feed. You my sexual therapy. You say I'm toxic, but you keep falling. Text me stop playing, but you keep calling. You say it's love, I say it's exhaustion. But we both know that we like that problem. Talking shit, girl, I talk mine too. Love when I pull up, no time to lose. We fight, then fuck that deja vu, yeah. You always come back like you got something to prove, yeah. I'm your peace and your chaos too. Can't lie, girl, you bad for my mood. But that body got a hold on me, you. I need one more round with you, yeah. We go again, round two, no cap. You know that sound when I make it clap. You said you love it when I talk that trap, so I whisper in your ear like that. Sexual therapy, girl, you my remedy. Sweat on your skin, you sweating out my energy. Say my name when I'm deep, that's my melody. Ain't no love, but the sex got chemistry, yeah. Sexual therapy, fuck your insecurities. Bend you over, hit it right, no sympathy. Baby, you a drug and I'm the fiend you feed. You my sexual therapy, yeah. Put it on me like I'm your sin. Late night sex, we go again. Say don't stop, I say when. Dripping on silk, but skin on skin. I know your body, my melody. This ain't love, it's therapy. You got me high like ecstasy. Girl, I need you next to me. Therapy. You're my sexual therapy. No doubt and no man, just me, yeah. Just me. Trade your baby.
That was Dre Dior, Sexual Therapy. Today, this morning, I'll be talking mainly about the fraud in Minnesota. And I know a lot of the politicians and, the influencers are more talking about the Somalians. Uh, and I'll be honest, right? It's funny to me that this program that they supposedly have, uh, the Waste and Fraud Committee, is actually, it's a great name, but there's no teeth on it. And that's what I learned uh, doing my resolution, proclaiming racism a public health crisis in Red Wing, Minnesota. And I mean, I would go back and forth with the city, because I wanted teeth in there. I wanted it to be more than just a token. I wanted, and to be honest, with everything going on right now, I kind of feel like that's what it is, a token. Uh, and I don't know where to go from that, because it's like everything that I feel like, um, that I've been a part of, that I've wanted to do better for the community, do better for people that are out here just struggling. And it seems like every time we attempt to do better for our communities, there's people out here like gatekeepers, there's churches, nonprofits, we have legislators, senators, representatives that are all entwined with this fraud. So when it comes down to our education system, it comes down to our judicial system. How can you expect any of those programs or services to be any type of good when they're off the branches of evil? No, I just want to keep it real. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I definitely want to keep it real, right? So when we talk about this fraud, it's not about the Somalis, because I will tell you like this: when I in 2022, after the legislative session, we brought them. I had a meeting at the state capitol with Republicans. I explained to them, me and Robert had been doing this already for over, I would say, about a year. And so we brought it to the Republicans, the waste and fraud, right? But the way that we explained it, that I explained it, because I learned, and I seen by looking at the U.S. Congress, I was looking at their committees, right? Especially with Paul Wellstone and Sharif Willis had went out there, and I seen that they would do these subpoenas, these judicial subpoenas. So I'm like, damn, why don't we do that here when it comes to this fraud? Because these people are not gonna come in willingly and just explain shit, right? You're gonna have to force them, because that's the one thing that I will tell you right now. These people are not gonna bite the hand that feeds them. They're not. They're not gonna bite the hand, right? So you have to force people. You have to, uh, and I shouldn't say force, but you have to legally. I won't even say legally, but that's the only way that a lot of this gets solved when it comes to the waste, when it comes to the fraud, because I know there's a lot of numbers out here. I'm going to play a different lot of numbers for y'all today. And none of them match up with anything that is going on. You have uh, the GOP, Republicans, saying it's about $9 billion, which I'm sure it is. That's the one thing that we have to talk about. I'm not saying that the Somalians did 9 billion. No, I'm saying that all races included did about 9 billion. You know what I'm saying? It's not just the Somalians, because we have to talk about Governor Walls. We have to talk about Keith Ellison. We have to talk about Peggy Flanagan. We have to talk about Bobby Joe Champion. And then we talk about these little NGOs and these RDOs. We have to really get down to the bottom of it. We have to get to the core of it. And a lot of people don't see eye to eye on that. They don't. And honestly, for me, I'm okay with that, because we're not. And if people don't understand this is like a war, this isn't no tag, you're it, because we're literally playing with people's lives. And that's what a lot of people don't understand or don't want to get, is that when it comes down to this politics, you're literally playing with people's lives. And that's what people don't understand. Y'all think the streets, when it came to the gangs and all that, is dirty? No, this is 10 times worse than that. So let me go ahead and play this Minnesota fraud. And here is the DFL response. Dave Pinto.
Committing crimes. It's a staggering industrial scale fraud.
Nobody in the legislature on the Republican side is interested in solving this. My God, it would be the worst thing in the world for them if this is solved like we're doing it here early this year, because then what are they going to run on?
Federal prosecutors announcing Thursday charges in several Medicaid-related schemes, suggesting half or more of the $18 billion paid out, so about $9 billion since 2018, could be connected to fraud. Governor Walz says he applauds federal investigators leading to prosecutions, most recently in housing programs and autism centers, but his administration says the massive dollar amounts now being put out to the public are unfounded. And the Inspector General for the Department of Human Services says he's asked the U.S. Attorney's Office for more information on how they arrived at that number. Lots to discuss. Joining us now is Representative Dave Pinto, the Democratic lead on the Minnesota House Fraud Prevention and State Agency Oversight Policy Committee. And I do want to point out, Representative, and to our viewers that separately later this hour, the GOP Vice Chair for this committee, Representative Patty Anderson, will be joining us as well. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Where to begin? These numbers, right or wrong, they're staggering. So how are we supposed to decipher who or what to believe at this point?
Well, I think the first thing to recognize is that any dollar that is going to fraud is $1 too many. Remember that on the other side of this are vulnerable people, people in need of services, support for their housing, people experiencing food insecurity, people with mental illness, our seniors. And so when dollars are not going to them, but instead going to fraudsters, that's absolutely infuriating. I, like Joe Thompson, I'm a prosecutor. I'm at the state level as opposed to the federal level. And so just at a personal level, I find that absolutely distressing. So that's a huge concern. We can unpack some of the other comments that were made in the videos that you played, but I think we should start with that.
Yeah, where do we go from here? That is the main question.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing, right, is go after the people who are in fact committing fraud. That's what you heard from the U.S. Attorney's Office, and that's happening in all kinds of ways. That's absolutely critical. But then also taking steps to investigate and to prevent, so we can then find additional fraudsters if they're out there, but then make sure that dollars are not going to that fraud in the first place. And there's been a series of steps. You heard from Governor Walz relatively recently that he appointed Tim O'Malley, who's a former superintendent of the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension under Governor Pawlenty, appointed to be the director of program integrity across the state. He also was a recent judge with the Court of Administrative Hearings. So we really need to have a very aggressive approach throughout state government. And make sure the legislature is passing changes that are needed. We've been doing that in a number of cases in the last couple of years, but there is a lot more to do. And as the governor alluded to in the clip that you played, unfortunately, Republican colleagues have not always been partners in that work.
And working through that, and we've heard that voiced on both sides, some of the lack of trust. Taking those next steps, we have a legislative session coming up in mid-January. How will all of this play into, getting this resolved?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so we have committees in the legislature that focus on certain subject matters, such as human services. And that committee that focuses on that last term passed a number of reforms, and I know that they will continue to do so this coming term. Unfortunately, you referenced this fraud prevention and agency oversight committee. This is one that I'm the DFL lead on, and unfortunately that particular committee, we've seen no uncovering of fraud through that committee and no solutions. We actually in that committee did not vote on a single proposal to fight fraud. That's a committee that is led by my Republican colleagues. They wanted to set it up, and then we heard just a few days ago that the chair of that committee, she says that she has information about fraud that she has not passed along to the state agencies that are empowered to actually cut off funding. So we've got a case where she's saying that she has information, somebody's committing wrongdoing, but then allowing the funds to keep flowing and not sharing it with those agency leaders that could actually do something to prevent it. I want to encourage your viewers, anybody else, if they're aware of any fraud in any of these programs, please make sure to report them to state agencies. They can, there's a number they can use, 651-431. 650. There's a hotline that's been set up by the Department of Human Services, Program Integrity, that can locate that online. But it's important that we go after fraud when it exists right away and cut off the funding and then go after the people who are doing it.
I think you cut off just a tiny bit while you were saying that phone number. So for our viewers, we will make sure to get that online as well as quickly as we can. So thank you for that. We appreciate it. And is that kind of the message when people don't know what information is getting to the right place? Should they just, if they have a tip, share it in multiple places at the state, federal, whatever level?
Well, we absolutely need to go after this in every way that we can. I guess one important distinction, though, is that it's their state agencies that actually cut off funds. This is something that we have put in place in the legislative process, and since it's in place, we want to make sure that the information is being reported there. That was the thing that was so distressing in learning about the Republican chair of the committee not sharing it with those state agencies. So yeah, certainly your viewers, if they have information, share it any place that they can, and certainly to state agencies. And I would call my Republican colleagues to do the same if they have information, rather than holding on to it and bringing up in public hearings and saving it for that. Let's not do this as a political or partisan exercise. Let's cut off the funding and go after the fraudsters.
Well, and again, at 9:45, we will be joined by the other side of the aisle, Vice Chair for this committee, Representative Patty Anderson. So we'll talk with her about that. Representative Pinto, thank you. We appreciate
I want to play the GOP response. Now, I agree with a lot of what Dave Pinto said. I shouldn't say agree with a lot of it, but we have to be, serious when it comes to this fraud and waste. If we're going to get it out of our government, right? If we're going to get it out of our services, because there was a lot of money that were supposed to go to communities that needed it, and that's not where it went. It went to so people could buy houses, cars, so they could go on vacation, so they could live it, the good life, the what so-called American dream, while you had people suffering. People died. This is the one part that I want people to understand, is that people died about this. They died because they weren't getting services. And that is truly, truly sad. The same thing when it came to the violence interruption. They were giving out juice box and stale ass cookies. Come on. People were supposed to be feeding the children, feeding the community. That's not what happened. They maybe fed some people, but they didn't feed the thousands that they were saying, because they were buying hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of houses, cars. And it wasn't just a few. That's the one crazy part that I really want people to understand. Because, last week on Thursday, when Joe Thompson had his press conference, he said, literally, we have something that is called fraud tourism. Because they had charged two men from Philadelphia that were coming here to get paid for their programs. And they weren't doing anything but $3.5 million. So that's how easy it was. We really need to start holding people accountable, not just the legislators. We need to hold the nonprofits accountable, this so-called independent media, because look at the stories they cover. Look at the stories they cover. And I will say out here, right? I'm not talking about Alpha News, because them niggas cover what they want to cover, right? I'm talking about Georgia Ford, Mercado Media, all niggas that have been paid. And here's the one thing. You didn't hear Georgia Ford talking about feeding our future. You know why? Because her husband's boxing gym was used as one of the sites. That's why, people are literally attached to this feeding our future. Because everybody wanted, here's the thing of it is, everybody wanted to say that they were feeding the kids, that they were feeding people, because it was that easy. There was no oversight. There weren't even checks. They weren't even going to check to see if that business was really real, because COVID was going on. So that's what I really want people to remember, man, is like, we're not being told the truth. We're not. And I feel as constituents, as taxpayers, we should be pissed because we have representation without no say because they do what they want to do. And when are we, the people, going to stand up?
Welcome back. Earlier this hour, we spoke with Representative Dave Pinto, the Democratic lead on the Minnesota House Fraud Prevention and State Agency Oversight Policy Committee, about the growing accusations of fraud in our state. Now we are joined by the other side of the aisle. Joining us is Representative Patty Anderson, Vice Chair for that Oversight Policy Committee. Thank you for joining us. So much to discuss. As I mentioned, we're just going to scratch the surface here with the few minutes that we have together. But picking up where we left off, Representative Pinto reiterated concerns about the statement from Chair Robbins earlier this week that whistleblower tips that come to the GOP leadership have not been forwarded on to the Department of Human Services, instead being sent to investigators, including the United States Attorney. Explain why that is and the reasoning behind it.
A lot of the whistleblowers, they kind of come in two categories. So a lot of them are employees at DHS, and the other section are essentially people that have gotten services in the past. They're signed up with someone, they realize that they're not getting those services, and that Medicaid's being billed sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, a month. It's crazy. But the folks that are DHS employees have in the past gone to DHS with their concerns. They claim they have been retaliated against, they've been shut down, and they're afraid. They're afraid for their jobs, and they have asked us for protection. So when they come in, we meet with them, or Chair Robbins meets with them, and if it's legitimate, that information goes right to the legislative auditor and right to the U.S. Attorney. The U.S. Attorney has been really the only one who's been doing anything about this, who's been prosecuting this fraud, and they're the ones that need the information.
We've heard from both sides. There's this lack of trust. Where do we go from here? How do any of us, as the taxpayers, know who to believe in this situation, and where do we find trust?
Well, I think there's a reason there's a lack of trust, and that's because this has been going on for years and years, and staff at DHS and other agencies. When you go back to Feeding Our Future, that was, hidden by the administration forever until someone at MDE went to the U.S. Attorney's Office because they couldn't get anywhere with their commissioner and with the governor's office. So they went to the U.S. Attorney's Office. That blew open that case, and as it turned out, most of those dollars were fraudulent. In this case, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office, they think half of this is fraudulent. We're going to unfortunately find out over the next year or two.
Yeah, and we know this will probably take years to uncover all of the details of that fraud number that has been put out there by the U.S. Attorney. And of course, it's massive. It got all of our attention this week, talking, potentially $9 billion or more. But the governor has said he believes that's unfounded. What do you say to that? Because it's still a could be.
It's a could be, and I think we're going to find out. The employees at DHS that are doing all the whistleblowing, they say that number is probably low, that it's $9 billion within just these 14 programs, and then there's all sorts of other programs where there's been fraud that they've been trying to bring to the administration. They've brought to the administration, and again, they've been shut down. These are folks that are lifetime employees, of DHS, people that want to do good, that want to provide services, that want to be helpful, and it's been really hard on them to essentially be shut down, retaliated against by the administration, by the governor's office, and to see all these dollars just flying out the door.
What does this mean for the upcoming legislative session and getting not only this figured out, but getting other work done? Right.
Well, we had a statewide inspector general bill, independent inspector general, passed to the Senate, bipartisan, almost unanimously. That was killed in the House, and hopefully we're going to get that in place, because we need to have independent agencies and independent entities that are above this, above the politics, like the U.S. Attorney's Office. And, you know, the current staff there, most of them were appointed under the Biden administration. This is not a political entity. And they're doing the work, they're getting the job done.
The thing that I want to say when it comes to the U.S. Attorney and how, you know, I don't know if people watched last week's fraud committee hearing when Nathaniel Olson got up there as a public speaker, and then they just got to talking about so many other things. Well, Robbins came out to say that she hasn't been telling, you know, some information. But I will say this is that the Democrats already knew. You know, that's the one thing that I will say is that even in 2022, when I brought this to the state capitol, to the Republicans, I tried to bring it to the Democrats first, Bobby, Irene Fernando, but nobody was really biting. Nobody even really cared. I even got some journalists, some reporters to talk about this story. And still, because see, and it's the thing that bothers me, right? Alpha News comes out with some pretty good stories, right? Sometimes, and sometimes they're really a lot of propaganda. You know, I will say that, right? But the one thing that I don't understand is when it came to the fraud, they were not saying anything bad about Liz and Alpha News, but it was like they weren't really running with it. You know, I've had some great conversations, a few during this texting or through messages with Ryan Faircloth with Star Tribune. I've had a few conversations with Louis Goose, Paul, forget the one dude's name. But it's like we're sitting here and have conversations, and I don't honestly know what I will say this is that when it goes to coming at certain nonprofits or saying certain names, they're not really talked about. They don't really talk about how the fraud was impacting North Minneapolis or how, you know, all this fraud impacted Rochester, Owatonna, Albert Lee, you know, St. Cloud. Because I can tell it didn't just hit the Twin Cities. You're going to see names come out even, and that's the part that I don't understand is why, and I don't, maybe it's just for political reasons. That's my take of it. It's just political reasons. We are in an election. It seems like we're always in an election year. But this one matters. This one really, really matters. You know, and even when it comes to Lisa, I don't know the lady. You know what I'm saying? I will say it like this, and this is my opinion. She is Black only under American construct because she doesn't know what it feels like to be a Black person, a Black woman. I'm going to keep it real. So they can use that BIPOC or that POC, but really they don't know anything about being poor and Black. She doesn't. And the same thing with Walter. They don't know the Black experience. So do you see them up at the state capitol trying to make the Black experience better? To make it that gap isn't so huge? No, you don't see nobody doing that. You don't even see the Black DFLers doing that. Because I will be honest, anytime that you try to do something real and put some power behind it, put some teeth, they're not into it. Because I can tell you right now, I remember this one conversation in Red Wing I had with the council, and they literally told me, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. And I'm like, wait, what? What do you mean? If it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. And I'm like, so if it doesn't benefit the city and it doesn't make the city money, y'all ain't gonna do it? I was like, that's some fucked up ass shit. Because that's the way it has continually gone over the years. The same thing with the Hmong and the Laos. They had so many issues with them. They've had issues with the Native Americans for years. And because a lot of it has to do with money, there's a lot of shit the natives will look the other way. And then there's some shit that the white people will look away. And I'm only saying white people because that's who's there. That's who that administration is. That's who runs that city. So I just want to be real. And I get so frustrated when it comes down to when they talk about this fraud and waste committee, right? And it's like, y'all ain't even doing it right. You literally, Lisa, gave up subpoena power so that you could be the Speaker of the House. That's, to me, is fucking ridiculous. Like, the one thing that really could have got, I really feel like with this waste and fraud committee, could have put them on a whole nother planet, was that subpoena power. Because then you make niggas come in and talk. The same thing when they got rid of the one guy the day before the hearing, the committee hearing. Well, subpoena would have still brought his ass in there to answer. It would have still brought up that y'all got to present documentation. But y'all didn't give a fuck about that. They gave a fuck more about performative actions. They wanted to be performative. They didn't want to do something, an action, because I can tell you right now, a lot of this shit, some of them got kickbacks. Some of them reaped the rewards of this waste and this fraud because they were in control. I will say this, right? Even if shit one of them got passed, but y'all should have at least had put it up and made it where the DFL would have looked like the shitty people. And yes, they did do a lot of that. But y'all could have made it a whole lot more. A whole lot more. But instead, you wanted to be performative. You didn't care about the U.S. Constitution, the Minnesota Constitution. They didn't care about none of that. What they cared about was to make it seem like they had a little bit of power when they don't. The governor is Democratic. Senate is Democratic. And we had a tie in the House. So Republicans didn't take control. Let's be honest. They have a power sharing agreement with the Waste and Fraud Committee that they would be able to lead and that they wouldn't have no subpoena power and that Lisa Demuth would be the speaker and Melissa Hortman, rest in peace, would be, they came up with some kind of, I don't even know, it's Latin name for her. Let's be honest. Why is it so hard to tell people the truth? That's the one thing that I will never understand and I still don't get is we can sit here and this is the one thing I'm really feel sad about Ryan Wilson because I really like Wilson. 2022, when we were behind the Republicans, me, Marcus, Todd, you know, we was really out there. And I liked Ryan because, and I still have his phone number. I still have Ryan Wilson's phone number. But my thing of it is like, instead of beating them, y'all joined them. That's the one thing that I can never understand is instead of beating them, we join them. That's what I know. That's how I know that values and morals can be bought easily. Can be bought easily. Because money controls you. It's not you want to do better for the people. It's that money controls you. And that's what people don't understand. And that's why you're seeing these property taxes go skyrocketing in some places. It's because our leaders literally fucked us over. Because we, the people, we're not paying close enough attention. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. What I'm saying is that we need to find a balance that we can be involved politically and then still do our everyday lives. Because there has to be a balance. Because there's way too long that people have been in control of our decision making, what we can do, and then doing it in wasteful ways, doing it in fraudulent ways, is because there was not enough people paying attention. There was not enough people involved. And to be honest, I was one of them. I can look in the mirror and say, you know what, Chaz? You were one of them niggas. You were one of them. You didn't want to be a solution. You wanted to be part of the problem. Because you know what? You knew that the solution can be bought. If y'all don't get that shit from watching enough of TV or just seeing that our police departments, our detectives can lie, we have confidential informants all running through the city talking about, I'm a real nigga. Yeah, I'm a real nigga. But then get in the motherfucking spaces and you start talking like a bitch. You start telling a whole story. You're not real. You're not somebody that, in my eyes, this is why I say fuck the streets. And I get it why G Herbo, 21 Savage, Young Thug are saying fuck the streets. And I think people are taking that out of context. When they're saying fuck the streets, they're saying fuck that trauma. They're saying fuck that code of law y'all supposedly live by, because there isn't any more code. There isn't any more real niggas, because I can tell you right now, money is the ruler. Money is the ruler. Because if you got that money, and that's one thing you don't get from this P. Diddy shit, because we got P. Diddy's in our communities, and niggas don't even be talking about that. Because the minute you start talking about fentanyl dealers, you start talking about the drug dealers, you start talking about the bad community members, then you're part of the problem. You're not. They don't look at you as part of the solution. They look at you as part of the problem. So that's where it's really fucked up in Minnesota, is that no matter if you want to hold people accountable, it doesn't come down to politics. It comes down to right versus wrong. It doesn't come down to Republican versus Democrat. It comes down to right versus wrong. It comes down that we hold that moral values, the family values. And I'm not saying, here's the one thing that I want people to know, right? I'm not sitting here saying that you can't be gay. And two women, I'll say like this, two women that are in a family, that's that family. That's that nucleus. It doesn't matter if it's the two women or two men. Hey, I don't want to be involved in y'all little bedroom activities. So what goes on behind closed doors, I don't give a fuck about. What I care about is, do we have those family values to bring people closer and unite them? Because a lot of money is distracting niggas. They're deflecting. That's what I think really people need to wake up to that shit. Here is Lisa Demuth.
What is your reaction to this staggering fraud scandal that has rocked your state?
For the last 7 years, we have looked at fraud that has exploded under Governor Tim Walz in autism services. Feeding Our Future, the food scandal during the COVID time, is the largest COVID food scandal, taxpayer money waste in the nation. And we've been sounding the alarm over the years. We're finally getting that national attention that we need so much here in our state to have full investigations. But you're right. It's over $1 billion in taxpayer dollars that have gone out to fraud instead of going to the people that needed those services the most.
All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Before we roll into today's wild clip, let me just say this. Every once in a while, you watch an interview that stops you in your tracks because someone finally says what everybody else has been dancing around, and that is exactly what Speaker Lisa Demuth does here. This entire welfare fraud scandal out of Minnesota is massive. We're talking over $1 billion meant for vulnerable kids, families, autistic children, and hungry communities. And while everyone else keeps trying to sidestep blame or throw out excuses, Lisa comes in with clarity, accountability, and honestly, a backbone. What you're about to see is her laying out calmly but firmly how this fraud exploded under Governor Walz, how warnings were ignored, and how accountability starts at the top. Her points are sharp, factual, and honestly hard to argue with. So before we hit play, do me a favor. Smash that like button, subscribe if you're new, and drop a comment below on whether you think Minnesota leadership handled this responsibly. All right, let's roll the snippet.
Governor Tim Walz hand over documents as we learn new details about the investigation into the $1 billion welfare fraud scandal. And new reports claiming Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar has deep ties to people who personally profited from the alleged fraud. That list includes one of her former campaign officials and a co-owner of the restaurant where Omar held her 2018 congressional victory party. It is important to note the Congresswoman has not been directly linked to the fraud herself. Joining us now is the Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives, Lisa Demuth, who joins me now. And Lisa, thank you so much for doing just that. $1 billion in taxpayer dollars essentially lit on fire. What is your reaction to this staggering fraud scandal that has rocked your state?
For the last 7 years, we have looked at fraud that has exploded under Governor Tim Walz in autism services. Feeding Our Future, the food scandal during the COVID time, is the largest COVID food scandal, taxpayer money waste in the nation. And we've been sounding the alarm over the years. We're finally getting that national attention that we need so much here in our state to have full investigations. But you're right. It's over $1 billion in taxpayer dollars that have gone out to fraud instead of going to the people that needed those services the most.
Tim Walz is up for re-election. What are people, what are residents in Minnesota saying about this?
Tim Walz is up for his third election here in the state of Minnesota. People were surprised when he was reelected for a second time. But when he was on the national stage just a year ago, it really let the nation know truly who Tim Walz is. Definitely let Minnesotans know his favorability is underwater right now. It's less than 50%, and it's mostly because he has not handled fraud, and he's increased our taxes and fees and spent through a record surplus.
You say that $1 billion could just be the tip of the iceberg. That's a pretty big iceberg. What do you mean by that?
Yes, and that is what we've heard from the acting U.S. attorney in the case, specifically looking at some of these things. That was said by acting attorney, U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson. He said this could be just the tip of the iceberg. It could push north almost to $2 billion. Again, these are taxpayer dollars that have been stolen by fraudsters here in the state of Minnesota.
Well, in 2020, according to the New York Times, the Minnesota Department of Education actually questioned Feeding Our Future, which is one of these fraudulent organizations, about all the requests that they were making. And the organization actually threatened the state agency and said that if you don't give us what we want, we're going to sue you, accuse you of racism. And I don't think we really want that kind of negative press. And the state agency caved. That's just one example of the brazen nature of all of this that took place over the course of 5 years. Why do you think this took so long to uncover?
I think there's been a lack of accountability at the very top of our state. You know, if threats were made such as those, you still push through, investigate the fraud, and stop the fraudulent payments that were going out. That is not what we've experienced here in the state. That is the change that we need from the very top. We're grateful that we've got federal partners that are coming in to truly investigate a number of these cases and look into the records. But accountability starts at the top. So that's with the governor and with his commissioners. That's not what we've experienced here in Minnesota.
Well, speaking of the top, of course, Governor Walz has been questioned about this now that it's been uncovered. And here he is talking about why he believes this took place in Minnesota. Watch this.
Do you take responsibility for failing to stop this fraud in your state?
Well, certainly I take responsibility for putting people in jail. Governors don't get to just talk theoretically. We have to solve problems. And I will note, it's not just Somalis. Minnesota is a generous state. Minnesota is a prosperous state, a well-run state. We're AAA bond rated, but that attracts criminals. Those people are going to jail. We're doing everything we can. But to demonize an entire community on the actions of a few, it's lazy.
So he says that this took place in Minnesota because he's doing too good of a job. What do you think about that?
AAA bond rating is not what criminals look at if they're going to come and do criminal behavior here in the state. What I would say is a well-run state, a generous state, and a prosperous state. But a well-run state does not, it means that the dollars that are collected from taxpayers go to the people that need it the most. not to fraudsters.
Yeah, and these people stole $1 billion for themselves while claiming it was going to autistic and hungry children. So let's hope that the punishment here truly meets the crime. Lisa Demuth, Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives, we thank you so much for joining us, speaking out about this important topic. You're very welcome.
Wow. Okay, now that we've watched the entire segment, I have to...
I want to go into what... So... in 2022, the end of the legislative session, I'm going to play this again, right? Because I feel like a lot of people don't understand that before they were talking about any of this, Lisa Demuth, Kristen Robbins, all of them, right? There was a time in 2022 when people from the community, got sick and tired of, I would say, the churches, the violence interrupters, and to be honest, I should have gotten the Feeding Our Future as well, because when I seen Empress come over north when we were on 36th and Penn and say that here's the thing that I didn't do. I didn't connect the dots at the time. And I don't think Marcus did either, because when Empress came over with the U-Haul full of food and dropped it off and said, I asked a couple of questions, and he was like, yeah, I got paid $100,000 for this. And I'm like, wait, what? And then we have pictures of the van. We got video. So I felt like we had to do something different, right? I seen it that the violence interrupters were not being on scene. They would always come afterwards. It's even one of the reasons why I was glad that Reggie Edwards, they didn't renew his contract when it came to Brooklyn Center city manager, because of what a lot of people, and this is for the activists, for the DFL people. So y'all are okay that people were getting paid $50, $60 an hour to watch protesters in Brooklyn Center? Y'all are okay with that shit? That's what I really want to know. Because in my eye, this is the same thing when it comes to a mother's love and all of them. They did so much bad shit that people in North Minneapolis, because who they are, decided to either look the other way, act like they were blind. So I want to get into, this is back, we did this presentation to the Republicans in 2022, me and Robert. So listen to this, it's about 11 minutes long.
Hey, I'm just going to real quick go through this PowerPoint about Minnesota regulatory agencies. So they're not performing their oversight job. Businesses don't have to register. They only enforce things on who they want to. There's tons of nonprofits and businesses that are not registered in the state. DBAs, you can go down the list. Churches registering as a DBA, whatever. Licensing, what I'm saying by the licensing not required is that's for construction, for professional services like mental health. You can go down the list. So unless somebody actually looks into it, they're not going to do anything. And half the time they're not going to do anything anyway. I know with the mental health stuff, they did actually do something with Salem Inc. stuff. But there's a whole bunch of stuff like that that's going on, especially with the taxes and whatever else, right? And also for the housing. So the people working on housing aren't required to have licenses because the city won't even check it. They'll just sign off on it, right? And then the background checks for working with youth. I have a data request in for the city of Minneapolis Public Schools. They still haven't gotten back to me on anything with the background checks for New Salem's Educational Youth Initiative. Okay. DOL and federal housing guidelines not followed. Inspectors sign off anyway. For the Section 8 stuff, they just pencil whip it. The same thing for the city's individual rental housing laws. And I have a video where me and Chaz actually called out to one of the cities. And there's a smaller city. And they basically said as much, that they will allow us to fudge a whole bunch of stuff in order to be able to get people in there until we were able to get it up to code. No, it needs to be up to code. Okay, the Secretary of State, again, they're not registered or doing business as a different name. You have landlords, rental agencies, churches, nonprofits. The churches and nonprofits also run under a duplicate LLC. Mother's Love also has an LLC. Salem Inc. also has an LLC. That type of thing. Safe Streets is just a straight LLC. It's not a nonprofit. Yet they're getting bills directly apportioned to them, right? So direct grants and loans to LLC orgs affiliated with Bill Author. Bobby Joe Champion is some of these people's actual lawyer. He has represented Flowers before. He has represented McAfee before. And a couple other ones. So, like, if you're doing up bills directly for, you know what I mean, and he's really involved with KMLJ and all that. Previously with CSI, that gets interesting. Please look up CSI. Bobby Joe Champion had an ethics investigation into him over CSI. The Republicans did not check to see whether or not this was done, because he didn't. Okay, he did not register with the Secretary of State. So his fiscal agent wasn't a part of that. For Clarence Hightower, that was a fiscal agent through all that debacle, right? And that was New Bethel Missionary Baptist Church. Now they have True Vine, whatever. I have it on the other one, other slideshow, the exact name, and I can get that for you in a second here. Okay, the bill's author staff works at nonprofit. They got the money. As Turning Point for one of them, they had a big thing about it. Well, it's not that she was working for them, but she was working for them during the time that they got the money portioned directly to them. Bill Author works with community orgs that push votes for them. They do grants for votes. Lack of oversight. LLC, nonprofit, the same name. Yep, and then no reporting and oversight requirements. Undue influence. The community org selected is not an open bidding process. They're based on previous involvement with Minnesota Heals 2.0 prior to the 2022 elections. The community orgs, they also contract with the Downtown Improvement District. I have a whole paper that I've written on that, which I can get you guys. I wrote it for my ethics class. About the undue influence and the legal problems and constitutional problems with how it runs, right? So it's not just my opinion. No, there's actual legal arguments behind it, right? In the Downtown Improvement District has an undue influence over the justice system. They have their own judge, prosecutor, etc. They also are able to tax, right? They levy taxes. They get the city to bite off on that. And the city's beholden to them. It's the reason why they have such a focus on Downtown Improvement District. Money's ever used for operations not in the community awarded for. They're not using the money as much in North Minneapolis and stuff like that for actually doing services. They'll do a small little bit there, and then they'll go do these other things where they're getting paid twice, because they're actually getting paid on top of their grant money. And known criminal affiliations. One of them being Shazma Dixon was their billing for New Salem, right? Now here's her stuff for where she did the fraud. And here's her involvement with 21 Days of Peace and New Salem. Okay. So, Marlon Ace Boogie Moore, another fraudster. He also ended up getting rid of evidence. He destroyed evidence in that. And you can go down the list. Here's the legislative update on that, right? And here he is signing for a contract with Minneapolis Schools as the CEO of Salem Inc. And here's their contract. Okay. The actual provider for the education services with that, the individual they have on that, isn't listed as an employee on the 990s. So that gets interesting. Okay. And open up another one here. me see if I can get this pull up. There we go. Okay, the Jones Day contract. So here's the thing: is Lugar actually got a activist hired on to respond to some of the stuff and put pressure on the city. That was Leslie Raymond. Redmond. Yeah, Leslie Redmond. Here we go. And down at the bottom in the recommendations right here. Okay. They got together and they got Leslie Redmond, right, to be the community leader. Well, then they also went and they contracted with the city to respond to the complaints. Okay. Only a few of the lawyers had been found to be registered. They were based out of the Minnesota office. The rest of the lawyers were not. I haven't been able to find their registration. The contract was renewed under Yvette McGee Brown, and the top three minimum did not register. I have all the information there. Okay. And the contract stuff. And then you have these community guys who got in with that. Now, see, in 2022, Lugar at Minnesota Heals 2.0 and met with many of these people. Okay, so these people were already selected ahead of time, and now they're getting the money. Okay, here's a different nonprofits. You can go look those up. Minnesota Safe Streets is a big one. Greater Mount Nebo. This was Flowers' mom's church, and you can see right here what I was saying on that. It's just a DBA as Al, his mom, and Joe Spratt. And here's the CSI stuff, right? New Bethel. Missionary Baptist Church doesn't exist. They made a True Vine, and they did that up later afterwards. Much later. Here's the appropriations. Right, New Youth Redevelopment. Shasma was a part of that. We have the documents on that. These guys get selected to become community leaders, and it gets interesting. So that's that. Hopefully that helps. If you guys need anything else, please let me know. And sorry about the delay in between the two. And I was trying to find the Leslie Raymond stuff.
So that was the presentation that in 2022 that, to be honest, there wasn't. Pam said a lot of, I will say this, Pam, during that meeting, Pam did ask a lot of good questions, and she acted, I will say this, and this is my opinion. This is not hers. It's not Pam's, and this is definitely not Walter's, who was the other legislator that was there. What I will say is that in my eyes, in my opinion, Walter stopped a lot of the, and that too, if you heard Robert's little like slide comment, well, he said that to Walter, that it's not just a conspiracy theory and that there was actual documentation to back that up. But again, I will say it like this, is that in my opinion, Walter was, in my eyes, the legislator who was doing the most to, I felt like, kind of stop it in its tracks before it really went anywhere. Because, and I still will say this today in 2025, going into 2026, is that, in my opinion, I feel like Walter got some kickbacks. He does a lot of journalism. And the same thing that I see is like people are not trying to beat the system, they're trying to join it. And that's what I don't understand is like, and it's the same thing. This is why, kind of the reason why um, I'm kind of falling back away from people, is because I kind of feel like they don't want the solution. They kind of are here to distract and to deflect people from getting the answers that they need and that they feel like they should get. Um, because that does mean a lot, and I don't think a lot of people in Minnesota, if they understood the fraud and the waste that was going on in our communities and how it was all linked to not only just the education, but in our judicial, and it goes in all education, like everything. And it's like, when are we, the people, going to stand up and do something about it? That's what I cannot ever understand, is like, people, they're all by any means necessary. But then when you start doing your digging on these people, like Jelani, like Tashira, and then you see they've all been paid off. They've all have gotten grants. They've all gotten, but see, they've done shit wasteful, because then you see the shit that be going on in the community. You seen the envelopes of cash. The motherfuckers want to talk about Diddy. Let's talk about how niggas filmed their sexual encounters with women in his own bedroom, and that most of the girls didn't even know. To be honest, I don't feel like a lot of them do. And again, I will say this again: I deleted, while he was in jail, I deleted videos. Yes, I will say that I was an accomplice to that. But there was so much fraud, and it didn't matter if it came to PPP loans, unemployment. Man, there was niggas getting unemployment from California that lived in Minnesota. And I'm just like, God damn, all the shit that we had been through. The same thing with this $1 Million Walk. They walked from all the way from Frank Nitti and them. Man, this the shit that's crazy. It's like, even the same thing with forget the dude who walked. But it's like, God damn. And like, I looked up to these people. The same thing with Jonathan Mason. But then when he wanted to charge me for knowledge, so that I could understand something, that's when people, a white man that was very knowledgeable, and I know a lot of people, he maybe had done some things wrong back in his times when he was a lawyer, but I feel like the things that he was doing was trying to make up for them because he knew it was wrong. I'm not saying that he could change it or like literally call it out, but there was ways of how to fight it. That you didn't have to bow down. And that's what I took, so I took city charter classes. I took ethics classes. So that's why when I see some of this shit, we should know better. But a lot of people don't want to know better because they're paid to do no better. That's the one thing we don't want to have conversations about, is how many people in our communities were paid to make sure that we didn't get to the solutions, that we didn't get to accountability. And it's been going on for years. This isn't something that's new. That's the one thing that it makes me kind of frustrated a little bit, because everybody wants to believe the media. But when people were talking about this in the community, they got called all kind of names. They got called, "You're a liar, you're this, you're that," even though they were telling the truth. They were demonized. So that trauma, that experience that they went through, they were demonized for what they went through. That's what I really want people to know. it's like all of this is so fucked up. And it's like a lot of people don't want to call it out because they get paid by it. They gotten paid to shut the fuck up. To literally shut the fuck up. Not to sit there and stand up. And that's the one thing that I will never understand it. It's like it always has to come with money to do anything. And it's like, are we really that kind of people that only money moves us? What about making a difference? So that this is the one thing that I can never understand. And it's the one thing that made me click in my mind is that I never wanted another black boy to feel like he was lost and had to do the things that I had to do to feel like I was loved, or that I felt like I was a part of the crew, or I was a part of. No, what I did was a cowardly act. What I did was a cowardly act. And not a lot of men in Minnesota can look in that mirror and say, you know what, I was fucked up for a while. I did bad shit, but I don't want the next young black boy to go through the fucking struggle that I had to if I have a chance and an opportunity to make it better. To make it better, because I've been offered money. I've been offered money to, oh, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, I don't want your money then. Because if I can't take the people who have been with me along, I don't want it. I don't want it. Because the same people y'all said who I wouldn't get this far with, we're still here. Marcus, he's still here. Robert, he's still here. But there's some niggas in our community they want to have their 1 foot in, 1 foot out, who are not here anymore. Who are not here. Because I'm going to be honest, is that a lot of people, and I will say the same thing about even for my brother, who is in the feds right now, is even I had to step away. Even I had to step away. Because we're not going to change people. If they want that fast life, that quick money. But here's the thing that I want people to realize. Why do we hate and become confidential informants? That's what I want to know, because every police department damn near in America has a budget for confidential informants. And that's what the people do not understand. And what I really don't understand is, even when it came down to like even some of these rappers, you know what I'm saying? Like I did like a lot, like Slim Jesus. There were some other ones, you know what I'm saying? But it really makes you sit here and think like, why do people want that life? Do they want that kind of pain, that kind of trauma? Because I can tell you right now that I've been in situations that I really I should have probably never had to go through. But I made that choice. I used to just blame it on everybody else because I never wanted to see that I was the one that was doing wrong, because I wanted to be able to put it on somebody else. But I can't do that no more, because I got to look inside. I got to be able to look in the mirror and be like, yo, dog, when are you going to change that shit? When are you going to be a man and leave that little boy shit alone? And that happened for me May 20th, 2020. May 26th, I think that's the date. May 25th, somewhere around there. But that changed it for me, because where George Floyd happened, I grew up in that area. So when I seen Brian Quinones, I watched that video. I was when he was on live that night, I was watching it happen. Jamar Clark. These are all things that have happened in the community where I grew up at, where I was raised. And I didn't know a lot of that shit even was going down. But for some reason, when I saw George Floyd and I saw what was happening, and I'm like, damn, that's kind of fucked up. So I wanted to be a difference maker. I wanted to be a difference maker. Because I can tell you that video changed my life. Some people will say it didn't do me any good, but for me, it did me. Because it made me look at my morals, my values. What did I want this world to become? What did I want my kids to be able to grow up in? Because I can tell you right now, in North Minneapolis, you don't see kids playing in the streets because niggas go too fast. You see more pedestrians hit in the last couple of years than anything in this world. The same thing with guns. But nobody wants to look at the bigger picture and look and see that our elected officials get paid to make sure that some of these situations don't get any better. That they only talk about it because it's a token. It's not things, they're not talking about things that can change your life. It's the same thing of like one thing that I figured out in 2021, with the three babies, Anaya, Trinity, and Davion, is like, I really see what people cared about. Because if it wasn't about drama, if it wasn't about that we could lie about something, then Black people didn't give a fuck about it. Because they didn't care that a little girl was eating McDonald's in the back seat of her mom's car and got shot in the head. Or that a young lady was at a birthday party jumping on a trampoline and caught a bullet in the head. And LaDavion's matter, that got into some shit with some other niggas and they wanted to start shooting. Like, when are we going to stand up? When are we going to actually do better? Instead of just saying something that we are doing it. When we know we can do a whole lot more than what we're doing. But we choose not to because we're paid. So I'm going to get into this video a little bit. And this is a political professor that is talking about the effects of the Minnesota fraud impact.
Over immigration enforcement, accusations of billions of dollars in fraud. There is a lot happening, putting a political spotlight on Minnesota right now. Joining us to discuss as much as we can in a few minutes together, Hamline University professor of political science, David Schultz. David, good to see you.
Thank you, and happy holidays.
You as well. There is so much to discuss, starting with fraud investigations. There's questions over, is it millions? Is it billions? Regardless, I'm curious your thoughts on how this is all unfolding, and can Governor Tim Walz survive this going into this next election?
Well, first, we don't know how much it is. There's a lot of speculation, and that's part of the problem at this point. Neither the Walz administration nor anybody else really knows the scope of it, and that is part of the problem for the Walz administration. Can he survive it? If we look at what's happening right now, I mean, the national media, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, the local media, he can't talk without fraud coming up as an issue. So he's associated with fraud at this point. I don't think he can shake that issue that's with him. What he has to hope for is something else. If he's going in for a third term, which would be unprecedented in modern Minnesota history, he has to hope for three things. First, that the Republicans nominate a weak candidate, that the Trump backlash helps in Minnesota, and he wants to change the subject. He keeps wanting to talk about guns. And so that's his game plan at this point, is to bank on other things and to change the topic. Because if he talks about fraud, no matter what he's doing, it doesn't work for him.
Yeah, and to that point, just on Friday, President Trump spoke about Mike Lindell and backing him in the Minnesota governor's race. So what do you think of his likelihood of getting the Republican nomination?
Well, Lindell was not a surprise in terms of running and getting Trump support. He's always been there for Trump. He's clearly going to be the the Trump people's candidate at this point. And he may very well have the best shot at the nomination, but at the same time, he may not be the strongest candidate that the Republicans put up. They need somebody who's going to attract the centrists, the independents in Minnesota. He's not going to get those. And so that's actually good news, I think, for Walz. Unless of course, Lindell really motivates the Republican base and Walz doesn't motivate the Democratic base. But it looks like at this point, neither the Democrats or Republicans are pitching a candidate who's going to appeal to those swing or independent voters in the middle.
There's so much to talk about. We're scratching the surface of a lot of things, but switching gears to immigration and customs enforcement continues to focus Operation Metro Surge within Minnesota. What do you see as the impacts of this at all levels of government right now?
Well, sure. Okay, a variety of things here. First, in terms of politically, again, this may help the Democrats, at least in the Twin Cities area, in terms of motivating them against Trump. A second point I want to underscore here. I've had lots of people come to me and say, why don't the local police arrest the ICE agents for doing these things? And I have to point out here, because they can't. They have no authority to arrest ICE agents. They cannot, they don't have to cooperate with them, but they can't impede what they're doing. And so that's another point to bring up here. But then nationally, we know that the ICE tactics are not resonating well, even among a lot of Republicans. And so it moves in lots of different directions in terms of what impact the ICE raids and immigration is having. That Americans support getting rid of those who are not documented or not legal in the United States, but they don't support the tactics that are being used.
Yeah, we will continue watching all of this very closely. And then, of course, we have our Minnesota legislative session coming up very quickly in mid-January. So we'll be talking to you again, I'm sure, then, if not before. Professor David Schultz, thank you.
So that was David Schultz, who's a professor, political, science. Yeah, and to be honest,
and our top story tonight,
things are going to get crazy in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, in the Twin Cities, that I don't feel like is going to hurt, that is going to hurt us in when it comes to certain areas. And how do we combat that? Especially because I will tell you like this, right? I am a man that I don't know where I sit politically, right? I know I'm not with the DFL because I know that their failed policies have hurt us, right? I'm not saying that the Republicans are no better, right? But I'm saying we need a balance in Minnesota. We don't need it to be one party way. And that's how it's been in Minnesota over the last couple of years. And we need to put our foot on it. We need to stop it before it gets out of hand. And I feel like we're in a place it's either make it or break it. That's what 2026 is. And I don't know how we move forward with ICE operations because I do feel like it's going to be out of hand. And that's why I want to talk a little bit about the story, because yesterday, about 8:30 a.m., you seen an ICE agent fired a shot in response to him being hit by a car. I believe that it was. And just for what David Schultz said, that local PD can't enforce anything when it comes to ICE agents. So why are we calling police? Oh, well, people are being kidnapped. Shut the fuck up. I literally want to say that because when Minneapolis police were beating children because they wouldn't tell them what they wanted, that's really fucked up to me that y'all are getting mad about ICE, but never got mad when it came to Minneapolis PD, when it came to St. Paul, when it came to the Metro Gang Task Force. Y'all didn't care about that. You didn't care about the Mayan Burrell story, or the Marvin Haynes, or Cornelius Jackson, Timothy Magruder, Pepe. Like, there's so many stories that y'all don't want to know. And I feel like we need for y'all to know these stories because going forward, they can help our communities. So that's all I got. But I want to play this about ICE yesterday, about 8:30 yesterday morning.
News at 9.
And our top story tonight, another volatile scene erupting between federal immigration agents and a person they were seeking.
The suspect apparently hit 2 ICE agents today in St. Paul. One of the agents also fired their gun. Fox 9's Leon Purvis joins us live in St. Paul with what we know so far. And Leon, it sounds like it went on for quite some time.
That's right, So Young and Kelsey. DHS says tonight that this involves a Cuban national who is not a U.S. citizen. Now, the federal authorities say they tried to detain the suspect as he got into his car near Westminster Street in St. Paul. That's where the first ICE agent was hit. Agents say the suspect drove off, hit 2 parked vehicles, and then the second ICE agent was hit. That agent fired their weapon. The Department of Homeland Security says the man then went to his apartment complex, rammed another ICE vehicle, and then took off on foot.
Just seen the agents roll up real fast, and they jumped out of the car and started firing. It sounded like there was 3 shots that went off.
Now, DHS says that no one was hit by the agent's bullet and that the suspect was eventually detained and that he was taken to a hospital for evaluation and remains in ICE custody, and the 2 agents were treated for non-life-threatening injuries. We're live in St. Paul tonight. Leon Purvis, Fox 9.
Thank you, Leon. And also in St. Paul, the BCA is investigating a police shooting along I-94. It happened around 3 this afternoon. General Motors notified police of a stolen vehicle driving westbound. Using remote technology, the car maker was able to slow the vehicle until it came to a complete stop. A man and a woman then jumped out and ran. As the man ran, police say he pulled out a handgun and pointed it at officers, who then fired their weapons, striking the man in the leg. He was taken to a hospital. Meantime, the woman was located and arrested a short time later, and all officers were wearing body cameras, which
Yeah, there's a lot going on in Minnesota when it comes to, ICE, even when it comes to these other operations that we have. I wanted to, real quick, is if y'all don't remember, there was an open call to A Mother's Love. We push for peace, we call them. We push for profits. And others to not assist in evictions. And to me, I thought this was really, curious, is because, or not curious, interesting, is a lot of people never called this out, never wanted to talk about it. But we have to sit here and have discussions about what these organizations, what some of them have done to the Black community in Minneapolis. We have to talk about how the Minneapolis police have been doing what they've been doing. We have to talk about We Push for Peace and how they were neglecting innocent bystanders who may have just been shopping. We have to talk about A Mother's Love, right? We have to talk about 21 Days for Peace. We have to talk about these churches. We have to talk about this NAACP, not only in just Minneapolis, not only in St. Paul, but also Rochester, St. Cloud. Because I can tell you like this, it's not just the Twin Cities. And that's what people literally need to get over with, because it's not just the nonprofits, not just, North Minneapolis. It's not South Minneapolis. And it damn sure is not the Somalians. So this is Dropbox. And we had, so these are our files. There's plenty of them. That is the non-Contel Pro, Jalen. I did that one. There goes Andy Luger, Minneapolis. And there's a lot. I just feel like people need to do their homework. There goes Jerry McAfee. So there was, and like I said, there's all kind of things that we need to do as a community that we need to pay attention to what goes on around us and just know that everything can and will affect us in some way or form. And elections do have consequences. That's really what I want people to sit here and think about and have, some kind of open discussions. Because I can tell you right now, as me, Chaz Neal, the urban conservative, I really feel like I am in a place where the DFL doesn't. They're so fucking lost that I damn sure can't vote for another Democrat. And the Republicans, I do have conservative views, but I'm definitely not a Minnesota Republican. And I sure the fuck ain't no MAGA. So where does that put us? Where does that put me? Because there's a lot of people in Minnesota who feel disenfranchised because they don't support either party. And I think that's the way that Minnesota should be when it comes to any seat, is that you don't support a party, but you're for the people. You don't pledge to a party, but you make that pledge to the people. And we've gotten so far away from that it's sad. It's honestly sad. So I just wanted to talk about performative power and half truths at the state capitol. Because that fraud committee that they have is without teeth. It's not going to get us any kind of accountability. They can't force anybody to come in there and talk. They can't make somebody pull out documentation because they don't have that power. They don't have that power to call on people to go up there and force them to tell the truth. Make them, and I really do hope that people, it doesn't matter if I'm talking about the people that are disenfranchised, right? You're tired of the Republicans, you're tired of the Democrats, and all you want to sit here is for the people, because we're the last ones they don't give a fuck about us. So that's why I really have a hard time, especially when it comes to the Republicans and this grassroots versus establishment, because really, what's the difference? To me, I feel like there isn't any, because Lisa says she's grassroots, or Walter, and it's like, our Professor Penn. And it's like, wait, you're not. You guys aren't grassroots. Stop calling yourself that, because you're establishment. I want to be honest, because there's a lot of people that want Donald Trump's endorsement when it comes to the Republican governors, and that's going to hurt a Republican candidate. Just watch what I say. Anybody that is looking for Trump's endorsement, they don't want. Most Minnesotans don't want, because we don't agree with Trump. There's a lot of things. I'm not saying that he's doing bad, or I don't. To me, honestly, I don't give a fuck. Is he racist? I never met the man. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? He has came on interviews over the last 30 years, 40 years, and said some dumbass shit. But that's who we knew. We knew Donald Trump as a celebrity. As a celebrity. So when he got into office, we shouldn't expect it any different, because he always did shit overboard. It was either his way or the highway. And if niggas didn't get that from his celebrity apprentice bullshit, you were blind. You were dumb, because he's doing the same shit. If something doesn't go his way, he'll fire them. So just wait on Pine Bondi. We just seen that shit with the Epstein files. That didn't get put out the way that we all thought it would. We all got sold a dream. We didn't get told the truth. We didn't get transparency or even facts. So I'll leave it at that. And I will be back tomorrow morning. I'll probably do one today, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then be done until next year. Because I really do feel like we need to do better. And that's why this song that I'm going to play at the end means so much, and it should mean something to everybody, is that we need to do better. We need to do better as people, as community members, as constituents, as residents, as brothers, as sisters, grandparents, Fathers, mothers, we all need to be paying attention. So with that being said, I'm going to get up out of here. Here is Don Tripp, Do Better. And I will see y'all same time, same place tomorrow.
Yeah, if you knew better, you do better. Niggas mad, we don't kick it, ain't no shoe leather. Put some diamonds on my lady and they two-stepping. Old school, spending old money, buying new weapons. Raised in the darkness, blacking out on whoever. Fully automatic, got more magazines than Hugh Hefner. Glock under my pillow, ain't no motherfucking tooth fairy. All my paper look like Ben Franklin eating blueberries. Knew better, you do better. Problem, you don't know nothing. See me in your city, then I'm picking up some show money. Better check my voter registration, got the poll on me. I ain't like designer shit at first, I guess it growed on me. Yeah, I guess it grew on me. Go ahead, make a move on me. Know I got that sticking, it look like a pool cue on me. Show of hands, who want it? Got enough to go round. Masked up lunatics, and we ain't talking slow down. You better, you do better. Go and chase your dreams. Learn that from my granddaddy, he died in his sleep. Honestly, that's better than him dying in the streets. Paid the cost to be the boss, but it ain't come with no receipts. Belly of the beast came with motherfucking beats. Busting up the block, I need a